Hello friend, it is Monday night in my fireside chat. I'm Pat Sloan, and on Mondays are a sew-along day, getting our pep talk for whatever sew-along it is that we're working on. And today is the jelly rolls. We're doing jelly roll quilts in December. So I am doing the ripple pattern, and I have my blocks so far up on the wall. So it is the 14th of the month. And that means, well, I probably feel like I am about halfway through making the blocks. And I decided to do them I'm using my Morrison Park fabric. And so I thought, well, what would that look like if it was done in colors? So I think there'll be 2 yellow blocks because there are 2 yellow strips in the jelly roll. So I'll put one on either corner. And then I did the pinks and green, blue, pink, red, that'll be green, blue, pink, like that. And I thought, oh, that's kind of neat. I'll have to see once it's done. Then if I don't like that, I'll just mix them back up like I had them before. So I've got the cart, and this is the ripples. I'm doing the ripples one. I think the rail is the other one a lot of you are doing. And some of you have gotten out a jelly roll quilt that you have maybe started and you're working on finishing it, which is just awesome. You know, the whole point is if you've got a jelly roll and you've got a pattern you've always wanted to do, or you've always wanted to use that jelly roll, that's what we're doing in December. So this is the layout, and for the ripples, I kind of like it like that. I'm also in the top here. I have all of these, the last of them done, sewn to this section. So what I'm doing is I've got them in the top of the rolling cart here. Let me push that down. So see, they're in here, and I just have them placed like I need to do them. And so I could do a few just like running through the stack like this. Like the next thing that goes on here is to put a stripe along the bottom, which actually is right here. So that is the next part for this. And I have those laying in the tray here in the rolling assistant ready to go. Then what happens, I'm really trying to have at least one a day to show you. There's actually 4 new ones up there since Saturday. But I will then do like chain sew the groups of them, but then stop and do at least 1 or 2 complete blocks. And so that's the process I've been using to do up here, and I think it's going really well. Like I expect I will get the rest of those light blue strips, the striped strips, onto that center, and that maybe do another whole grouping before I have to do a block or 2. And then they're all moved ahead quite a bit when you work like that. And some of you have really done well. A couple of you have finished a whole top already. Some of you have showed, like you really moved forward on a project that's been sitting around with the jelly roll. So it's like awesome. Now I want to talk a little bit about the stomp. The stomping grounds, our elephant quilt along from Wendy Shepard's super adorable quilt that she did for my Morrison Park fabric tour, and it was so cute that I have to make my own. So here is the back side, because I want to show you something. A lot of people have asked, can they make an elephant, one of the elephant bodies, from a layer cake piece? And so I tested this out, and also, was it Ed or Tom? One of you, I got your name wrong, tell me your name again, I've forgotten which one did it, tested it also. And so I tested it, and I can say that you can, if you don't mind being frugal. So first, let's take a look here, because what I did, okay, so I got some parts here to show you. All right, so I took a layer cake from Morrison Park, and this is, I'm using the same colorations as the one block that Wendy did. Okay, so here's a layer cake. A layer cake is 12 inches. The pattern calls for fat quarters because you will do two elephants from one, fat quarter. And you don't have to be too frugal. There'll be some left. But on a layer cake, that's a different story. You're going to have to be super frugal if you want to cut a body from a layer cake. And let me show you what the body is. So the body will be all of this floral. So not this, not the trunk and not the ear. So this is the ear, that is the trunk. But the body parts can be cut. But this is what you will have left. This. This means you have to be super, super frugal. And if you make a miscut, you'll just need to go to a different layer cake. You also will have a more variety because the layer cake, you know, there's a few more, I think, pieces of fabric in it than what she used. And you might want to get, you know, the stripe, some extra stripe maybe, or some extra if you want all the ears the same. She did one variation, I think, with all the ears the same. So you can look at the supply list and decide. But if you are somebody who doesn't mind being super frugal, you'll have to lay it out carefully and then cut carefully. You can get it from 1 10-inch square. But this is all you're going to have left if you did not miscut. If you miscut, it's a goner because there isn't anything really you can, you know, you can't really cut another piece from here. There's just not enough fabric. So this is the pattern. And now the print and the digital are available, and there are, what I write, there are 18 elephants in this quilt. Now if you want to make a bigger quilt, you could do that, and I will, you know, you could do a border on it too, or not. If you wanted to make more elephants, you could do that. But this is the basic pattern. The supply list has all the stuff that you need. And you can get, you know, you can get it and be ready. We're starting it, doing the first elephants on the, I think it's the 28th, is the first Monday in December, which is what's coming up. Oh, I'm sorry, the last Monday in December. So where did I get first from? Anyway, so I think he's super cute. I can't wait to do more colors. They're so darling. And she has a few going the other direction. So do you see that? There's like here, like they're just facing each other. That's so darn cute. And then down here, they're facing each other. So you've got like 2 of them going the other way, which is so sweet. I think they need a little applique heart between them. What do you think? Like a little applique heart right here? Maybe we'll have to do that. I'll give you a little heart, that shape that you can put there to applique. Hey, why not? Why not? You could embroider tails too if you wanted. You could make little tails on there, embroider that. You could just make it your own, right? Just make it your own. So I do want to say thank you before I go any further. I want to say thank you for some sweet, sweet cards and things that came. My friend Shirley in Canada sent me a Christmas card. Look, I got it, Shirley. I have to tell you a story that Shirley is one of the quilters that was from my groups years ago before I was on Facebook. And she's, you know, we all talked a lot, and they're all still, all of this sort of small group that came and followed me over to Facebook. But Shirley has her local shop. She told her local shop owner that she knew me because she was in my group, and it was, you know, really fun. And her local shop owner met me at the trade show and said, "Do you really know Shirley?" I said, "Yeah." Haven't met Shirley in person yet, but someday, Shirley, we might do that. Then Michelle sent the super cute birthday card. Look at that. I love that cake. Look, you gotta have cake for your birthday, right? Unless it's on Thanksgiving Day like mine was. Then you have pie. But Shirley also sent me a super pretty bookmark, and she said it has the turtle, because the turtle symbolizes being slow and steady, which is just perfect for me this year, right? Got to get it done. You can get it done, slow and steady. I'm not sure, it's not Michelle, it's from Melanie. This is from Melanie in Wisconsin. Thank you, Melanie. I read that wrong there, reading through bifocals. Thank you, Melanie. And then Nancy sent me another Christmas card. Look how cute. And chocolates. Oh my goodness. Little Santas. I have to tell you, Mr. Greg has already been in here to eat a Santa to test it to be sure they were okay. Aren't they cute? Looks like they're probably from a local, it's in Medford, New Jersey, and Riley's Candy. So if any of you are familiar with that. So then Nancy also sent me an advent calendar to make next year. It's a panel, and this is, it's got the barns on it. Here, wait, I gotta get it open. How's it go there? Oh, okay, so here we go. So the panel part, there's the panel part. And then it has all the little advent things around the edge. So it's super cute with the barn. And then I'll have all the advent numbers down here, and then a whole panel over here with directions on how to do them. I think you imagine you put these and you tag them on there. I didn't actually read the directions yet on how to do this. Whether you're just making like little pockets on the bottom half, I think that's what it is. Yeah, so you're using these guys over here to make little pockets on this side. Super cute. These things are always, this is so fun. I can't wait. So I'll put it in my Christmas box that you saw. So I will remember, I'll put a note on my calendar. She suggests maybe I do it in July. Called it in July. That's that would be just in time, right? Take all that time to do it? Probably. So, awesome things. Now, I talked about, get your calendar, remember, if you haven't downloaded that, it's like the friendly reminder. But on the calendar page, I have added on Saturday a planning guide. And I'm going to link you to the video I did Saturday. So if you didn't watch my Saturday video yet, I talk about the planning guide, because what I wanted to do was have a place for us to write down some goals. It should really be like a goal guide, I guess, but that just sounds weird. And it's not a schedule. It's a plan of action for yourself, and it's by whatever date frame you want to pick. So if you want to have what you need to do in the next 3 months, or what you want to do in the next 3 months, that's what these like major categories are. And part of this I developed because I feel like we really need to have some strong purpose, and to be sure our attitudes are good, and that we actually have things that we want to do that we make happen, so that we enjoy the next few months while we're waiting in for the pandemic to finally be over, which, you know, is still going to be months away. Months, you know, it might be summertime before a lot of us are comfortable doing normal things again. So that's quite a bit of time, and I want to be sure we are on doing fun things and having a good life in that time frame. So that's what the guide is for you to write down some key items to make sure you do them, because if you just think about them, they often don't happen. If you kind of write it down and say maybe when you want to have it done. So like for me, health. Under health, I want to try to walk. I don't want to try. So that's I will walk any day that I can outside, but also I will be doing yoga every day with Yoga with Adrienne, and she does a January challenge. So I'm getting the t-shirt this year. I didn't do that last year because I was just sort of ramping up last year to do it, and I didn't get started right away. But this year I'm going to buy her t-shirt for the January challenge and do yoga every single day. So that's a specific health goal, and that's what I'm talking about for the plan. Another one I've got on here is like the cooking thing. Well, I've said I wanted to do sourdough bread forever and ever and ever, and we're starting to have a conversation about that in the Kitchen Adventures, and now I am going to do it rather than just think about it and talk about it. It's like I just said to my mom today. I was like, what's the worst can happen? I would throw away some flour, that the starter didn't work out well, or I went through that whole process and it didn't turn out well, but I will learn a lot. And that's exciting. It's exciting to stretch our brains a bit right now when things, it gives you something else to focus on, a different kind of purpose. And you might have some goals of, a lot of you do charity work. Do you have a specific goal for your charity, whether it's making quilts or doing something to help with their website, your charity group's Facebook group, or sending out announcements for things, that running a collection drive and being the person who goes and collects the things, whatever it is. That's what the planning guide is for. So you can download this on the calendar page. And then I also have had these for years, and I put them on that page. That's for quilt tracking. So I've got two different pages, and you can take a look at those as well. They're on there. All right, so I asked if you had some questions I could answer, because it's great to have the Q&A. There's a lot of fun things that you want to know about, a lot of interesting things you want to know about, and I don't always know what those are. So when I ask you, you tell me. So I've got a few here that I think are really good. Let's do Robin's first. So Robin asked, should we wash material or not? I mean, this is like an age-old question. I think every quilter has run into this question forever. She also has a second part to that. But first, let's talk about washing fabric. It depends on how much of a risk taker you are, because there are certain fabrics that do run. Traditionally, colors like red, dark red, lots of red, most reds, many reds. I've found dark navy, dark green might run. You never know. So unless you test it, you don't know. Now, quilt shop quality fabrics, good quality fabrics, over the years, their dyes have become really solid, and so they tend to not run anymore. There just has a very low probability of them running. But if you're doing a red and white quilt and you intend to wash it ever, then you might want to wash all that red first, just to be sure. With color catchers, until your color catchers are clear, they're not picking up dye anymore. Or you can use the chemicals. There's synthropol and retinol, retain. Synthropol, retain. I may not be pronouncing that right, but those are two chemicals used for dye setting in fabrics. And you follow the directions, one's for one thing, one's for another, but those are the two common ones. So that, this is yardage off the bolt, fat quarters, So let's talk about pre-cuts and washing. Okay, so a pre-cut, the fabrics are, cut into this size. When some people will rinse these, they still will rinse it and lay it flat to dry, which is a lot of work. Anything smaller than this, like a 2.5-inch strip, like a jelly roll strip or a charm pack, you're going to probably have a lot of warping when you wet it and dry it. It's it's fiber, and it's just not. You've already cut it, and so it's got this little 2.5-inch strip. It's not a good idea to wash them in advance. Although I know people will, and if they they'll press them and try to get them back into shape. So what do you do about those? I would say most quilters, for a pre-cut, don't pre-wash. They just cross their fingers and throw the die catchers in for the rinse, and 99% of the time they're probably fine. So that's why I said it's really how much of a risk taker are you? Are you someone who, the project, you could have no risk on a project, it's for a wedding gift or something like that, that you just can't risk it, then you're going to need to use things that can be washed first, and then they're washed, and then you can go on your merry way. So you would not want to use a pre-cut for something like that. I had a quilt that, basically the best way to have fixed the problem of the dye running was to over dye the whole quilt, which you can do afterwards. Of course, then it's not the same, but you can at least fix it somewhat. There are other methods with using Dawn soap and things like that to get out dyes that have run. But we're talking right now about how to prevent it happening. Running, it would be to pre-wash. So now she had a second part of the question was, do you starch things or not, including the yardage or the pre-cuts? Starching, for me, I only starch fabric that I will use for small patchwork. Like if I'm doing, like on the elephant quilt here. I did not do it for this one block to show you, but there are some little squares for sew and flip up here. So I will probably take a piece of the background fabric and I will starch it. And then I will cut all those little pieces just from the starch fabric, because they will be firmer. They won't like this, you know, when they're a 1-inch square, that's tiny, and that can get sort of sucked into the machine. The machine is running pretty fast, and you just have this little teeny weeny scrap of fabric you're trying to run through there. When you have it firm from starching it, it will stay better. It will stay flat, and you know, it won't get sort of sucked down in when the needle pushes it. You know, the needle pushes it and the, you know, goes through. So I will starch a piece of fabric just for those specific squares and not do the rest. I'm not going to do all of them. Now, starching pre-cuts, same problem with washing a pre-cut. It's exactly the same. You're wetting it. Wetting it means that it is going to change shape a little bit. And then you're going, you know, so no matter what happens, it could shrink a little bit. It just could just sort of warp a little bit. So it's not, you know, like a 2.5-inch strip is the perfect example. Take one and test it. Cut some 2.5-inch strips, wash them. Cut some 2.5-inch strips and stretch them. Then compare them to ones that have not been washed and not starched and see what happens. So it's all about learning and experimenting. Yeah. That's kind of fun, actually. You kind of learn a lot when you try it and you experiment with some fabric and see what happens. All right, so I have another question. Let's do this one, which is, Jerry wants to know, what is the smallest block I've ever made and used in a project, and what's the largest block I've ever made and used in a project? Okay, the smallest blocks I've made, which would be a complete block. I would be talking, remember I talked about miniatures, what was a miniature quilt? You know, it's not like a 2.5-inch square just by itself, you know. Oh, that's not a good example. Well, anyways, a miniature quilt is a smaller version. It's like a dollhouse. Remember I said with a dollhouse, if you have a bowl and it's not to scale to the table, but it's a small bowl, and you stick this small bowl in the dollhouse, but it's not in scale to the furniture, that's not a miniature bowl. It's just a small bowl, like you might have a, you know, a nut bowl or something. That's not a miniature bowl. It fits, but it's not in scale to everything else. That's what a miniature block is. A miniature block is in scale. If you're doing the socialites, it's a perfect example. They have 9, 6, and 3. Me, I've gone 6. Well, the Dear Jane were 5 inches. So 5-inch squares was the Dear Jane because Jane Stickle made her blocks 5 inches. That's the size she picked when she made her quilt back in the Civil War. So those are 5-inch blocks. That's the smallest blocks that I've made. I don't care to make anything smaller. It doesn't interest me. I think they're darn cute, but I don't personally want to make them. What is the biggest block I've made? Probably in the solstice is, I think there's like a 20-inch block or 24-inch block, something like that in the solstice quilts. I love big blocks. 18-inch blocks are awesome. You know, they have their own personality for getting their impact across, but they are big impact quilts. So when you do a big block, they're super fun. So I like doing that. And when I really get into 6-inch blocks, like when we did the Splendid Sampler, I love doing the 6-inch blocks. They're a challenge. They're fascinating. You learn a lot about how to work with things. You learn a lot about starching your fabric. So 6-inch blocks are pretty cool too. Let's see if we do one more. This question is kind of interesting that Joyce has. And it's not really something, I'm going to give you a very basic answer, and you have to go do a little bit more research. How do you like that, Joyce? So Joyce wants to know, when you complete a quilt and you're ready to quilt the layers, okay, so you want to put a design to quilt all the layers, the top, the middle, and the backing. She says, is there a rule of thumb on what designs to do for the top? So she gave an example, which, thank you, Joyce, that's very helpful. So I totally understand what you're asking. She said, like if you have a quilt with a lot of stars, is there a rule of thumb that you should put curves on there or outline things for other types of projects? I would say no, there is no rule of thumb. I would say that for me and a lot of people, every quilt that you look at is its own decision-making time. You decide when you see it what's going to happen with it. There isn't any book you can look in that says, oh, every star quilt should have curves on it, or, you know, every geometric you should put flowers. It's just, you know, the quilting is another level of dimension and beauty to your piece. The quilting can do a lot of things. It can take something very basic and make it amazingly spectacular. It can make it just functional. It gives it texture. When you do an overall design, you're not following anything. So that's one option. And a lot of people use that option. It gets the layers together, it's pretty, it gives it texture. But when you go into doing designs to meet the top, that's a different way of looking at things. So like when I applique, if I have a basket, and the basket has flowers in it, and that's what the quilt is, you know, a basket with flowers. Maybe there's multiple of them, maybe it's just one big basket. I will generally, I have kind of this is kind of the only thing that I do that's consistent, is I will outline the applique, so that, and I like to make the background behind it sort of heavily quilted, so it pushes back, and that the applique sort of more visually lifts up because it doesn't have so much quilting. It might have quilting in it, but not so much. And the background is more densely quilted, so it sort of recedes. And that, to me, showcases the applique really well. Now, I would say that if you want to get into what kind of custom designing can be done on things, is to start following long arm quilters, because, or people who quilt on their domestic machine where the quilting is their focus. So Karen of Redbird Designs, Angela Walters, and you know, those are just two that come to my mind immediately. One primarily does sit down, Karen, but she also does long arming, and Angela pretty much does long arming, but she also can sit down. And they tend to have a lot of, Angela does a lot of videos on YouTube, so you can go watch her videos. You just get an idea of what somebody does, but there are tons of people out there doing these and showing you how they think through a quilt to decide what pattern to put on it. And there is as much artistry and as much time and as much work put into those as it is to make the top. I mean, it can be very labor intensive. So like when Shelley, and I'll link you to Shelley's website. She's a long armor that I use who does some of my custom work. And she will ask me, she goes, do you want feathers on this? Or do you want it traditional? Or do you want it a little bit more contemporary? So you have this conversation, but there's no set guideline that says this is exactly what you do. It is learning a whole second level of art to put onto your quilt if you're going to custom sort of put the design to your top. So there you go. That's what it's all. That's how I see it. If any of you have knowledge of a standard guide, which I've never seen, put it in the comments. That'd be good to know. I don't know of one though, so I think you just have to sort of watch and learn. It's like a whole nother thing you learn about quilting, is putting those layers together and making them beautiful. So I had a little post I put out on Facebook to get questions to answer. If you're not on Facebook and you have something you'd like me to talk about that isn't necessarily a demo thing, something I have to gather stuff up, you know, questions like I just did now, where I can talk a little bit about what I know, or give you some pointers, someplace to look, you know, leave them in the comments. So I'm going to close out showing you, whoops, let me just show you the crochet, because I had a lot of great friends there who crochet, who said take it down a hook size. And so I want to show you what I ended up with. This was the original one that I showed you. Well, this is like the second one that I've done, but this is the one I showed you the other day. And I decided it just was too loose. It just felt like it was going to be not, I don't know, much too loose for me. So I am now doing one, whoops, there we go. So I've hooked around because I was crocheting while I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I went down 2 hook sizes to an H. This was a J, and this one feels tighter. You know, the triple crochet that's in here are not as loose as this, and so I think I'm going to continue on with this one. And now I finally got into the turquoise color. So that means I will undo. Frogging is, I guess, the common term, just like, you know, we say we unstitch or unsew or rip. We frog in sewing as well, but apparently crochet, the frogging is its common term to pull out all the stitches. So I'll just stick it back into this ball and do this as the second ball that I work on. But yeah, I think that one is going to work. I think it's going to be just the right texture for me. That's good. Yay, that's good. And for those of you who are newer and maybe don't know, let me just remind you, the other thing besides the elephant sew along coming up is the free mystery that'll start the first Wednesday in January. One of those J months. January. So this one will be however many weeks I told you. We go into June 2nd. So it's a little bit longer. It's asymmetrical. So layout, which means I'll have larger and smaller blocks. It will not be a symmetrical layout. It'll be very similar to my solstice. And I will have a little bit of applique in it. And for those of you who are afraid of applique, I hope that I can challenge you to give it a try. It's just a little bit. It'll just be a little bit. And if for some reason you just are so allergic to it and that you won't even try it for me, then you can leave it off or, you know, whatever. But still join, because you will have an option. Let me put it that way. If you don't want the applique, you don't have to do it. But I do challenge you to give it a try, because, you know, I really love applique. It gives you a large amount of freedom to be creative. And I hope that you will want to experience that with me. All right, my friend, thank you so much for being here. If you will use my links below and subscribe, that would be so awesome. And all my stuff I talked about down below. So I love you. Mwah. See you online.